Hi, everyone. It's good to see so many of you. We'll be starting in just about 1 more minute. We're just letting everybody join in on the meeting. And then as you come in, if you guys don't mind just muting your microphones, and we will have a chance at the end to ask some questions if they come up. Thank you. All right, we'll just wait a few more seconds here. We've got a few more people joining us. I hope everybody's enjoying this beautiful day. I just heard it's supposed to be almost 70 next Thursday. I'm so excited for that. Forget what it's like to have warm weather. All right. Okay, well, I think we will go ahead and get started, just so we have enough time for everything. But thank you, all of you, for being here today for the Fostering Unsocial Kittens workshop. My name is Karen. I know I've talked with most of you before. I work in the volunteer department. We're so grateful to have your interest and have you joining us this evening. Just one quick thing I wanted to mention is we will be, I will just be checking everybody who is here, just so that I can give you those hours on your account for attending tonight. Hi. And so if you can just make sure that the name that is displaying on your Zoom account is the correct first name and at least last initial, that would be great and really helpful for me when I'm just checking off who is here to add those hours in Vic for you guys. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Jess, who is here to present this evening. She is our cat behavior specialist. I know a lot of you have worked with her, have talked with her, and she is just such a wonderful wealth of knowledge in working with our cats here. And we're really grateful for her time and for her expertise this evening. And Jess, if you are all set, I will pass things over to you.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining us. And I wanted to mention, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll try to address them kind of as they come up. And then we'll just grab a little bit of time at the end for any questions you might have. I'm sure a lot of you have, this is nothing new for a lot of you. So certainly if you have any thoughts or input, definitely just drop them into the chat and I'll try and grab those as we're going. And if I miss one, I'm sorry, we'll pick them up at the end there, but definitely feel free to utilize the chat and I'll try and catch those as it happens. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And I'll try, I can be kind of wordy, so I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. We'll keep within our time frame here, but let's talk about how we can work with fearful kittens in a foster home. Let's kind of dive into this. So our agenda tonight, I just want to briefly kind of go over what the typical history of these kittens is. What is their background? What do we know about them? We'll just kind of touch on that. Some brief kind of a brief journey into body language and what behaviors you can expect. We'll talk about how to set up your fostering space, and then jump into some desensitization techniques, how we can actually work with these guys to help socialize them, and when to move forward with what you're doing. And then kind of people, you know, when I'm communicating with foster parents, I often hear, well, what are we looking for? What do we need? What are we shooting for here to get them up for adoption? So we'll talk a little bit about what we're kind of looking for to get them up for adoption. We'll touch on what the potential outcomes for these guys are as far as adoptions looks like, and then just how can we keep in touch with one another. So we'll kind of go through all those things tonight. So where do these kittens come from? You know, I think we're all aware of, you know, the kind of the unsocial kitten. You know, sometimes they're with mom, sometimes they're on their own. So where are they coming from? We see at the shelter kittens who are born to an unsocialized mama. The mom herself has had little to no interaction with humans. Perhaps she's a neighborhood cat that is used to going from home to home, getting food from people, but not really interacting with people. So these kittens have a learned behavior from their mom, which teaches them to be very fearful of people. These guys can be colony cats, cats that are born in a feral colony, or, just kind of out there on their own as well. And if mom has little interaction with humans, she's going to teach those behaviors to her kittens. There's a difference between perhaps a socialized mom who is used to interacting with people and has a level of sociability with people, who has a litter of kittens. Maybe those kittens aren't handled very much by people, but the mom cat has some level of sociability. Those kittens are going to be a little bit easier to work with than an adult cat who has kittens, who has no level of sociability. So when we talk about generational behavior, what we're talking about is a kitten who's born to an unsocial mom, who's coming from a situation where she is surrounded by other unsocial adult cats, or perhaps she's on her own, but there's no level of sociability. That mom cat has not had interaction with people. She has no level of sociability, and her kittens are going to be less social than those born to a more social mom. I hope that kind of makes sense. But so we'll be seeing both of those situations. We'll see the single moms that kind of coming on their own, who've been doing things on their own without a colony to support them. And again, it's often these neighborhood cats who are just giving birth to kittens out there, kind of finding a way to make it through the world without human intervention. But they may have had some interaction with humans. It just depends, on where they live in the world, what they needed to do to find resources, and who is caring for them. We'll often overwhelmingly see kittens who have no mama. We don't know where she's gone, but she's taught them pretty well to be fearful of humans. So it's entirely likely that mom took off. At some point, her kittens, she left her kittens in a safe place, a human approach, she took off, she got scared and took off, and the human scoops those kittens up. That's going to happen quite often. We are never going to know where that mom went. She's probably somewhere close by, and someone took those kittens, and now we're going to socialize them. We're also going to see these moms with kittens, or just single kittens without a mom, who had a single caregiver. And these guys can often be, unfortunately, just as difficult as just an unsocial mom with her unsocial kittens, only because they may have bonded with one caregiver, and now they've kind of learned a way of interacting with this caregiver. And they may not have ever been inside. So their entire experience is getting resources from a caregiver outside. So now we're bringing them inside and exposing them to things that are new and very scary for them. So there's all different levels of interaction with people that we're going to see. And each kitten is an individual. Even an unsocial mom can, have a litter of kittens where some of the kittens are more defensive than others. It just depends on, partly their genetics and partly what their experience has been in finding resources. And there's a lot of research that supports the sociability of the father cat actually has a lot of impact on the sociability of the kittens, but we're not going to get too far into that. It's just important to know that these guys have come from the outside world. They have learned to be afraid of people, and we're going to try and help them with that. So just a little bit about body language. I think most people know what a fearful kitten is going to look like. With these guys, we see a lot of vocalizations, whereas a fearful adult cat is going to be pretty quiet. Fearful kittens, their biggest defense mechanism are their vocalizations, the hissing, the spitting, the growling. Those are kind of their biggest defense mechanism, because they're so small. So if they can make a lot of noise, they can keep people away from them. So we'll see big, wide open pupils. Those kittens are amazing at their very flat, angry ears. They have a very strong fight or flight instinct, so they can go from having a very frozen, kind of tense body position to just being prepared to flee as quickly as possible. Unsocial kittens in a lot of ways can be more interesting than just a very fearful adult cat, because they rely purely on instinct and what their mom has taught them. And that fear often kind of foists them into an environment where that fight or flight is very strong with them. So we see kind of all these extreme body postures and vocalizations and body language from these guys. Their hair coat will often kind of prickle. We see piloerection, where the hair raises up on their, their shoulders and their back. Anything they can do to make themselves seem bigger. That's what they're going to do, because they are, in all reality, quite small. So the bigger they can make themselves seem, the more likely they believe humans will just kind of move on. So this little guy, I'll run this video in a second. He kind of has all of the things going, those big pupils, his ears are flattening to his head, a very tense body position. He's got lots of vocalizations going on. He's quite avoidant. So just kind of have some idea of what noise they could make. Well, so very short, but yeah, I mean, that big wide open mouth, the hissing, I didn't move in close enough to make him spit at me. It's hard to take videos of these guys because I don't want to, upset them any more than they already are. So, but those are just that's a very typical body position, vocalization. The pupils are doing what they always do. His ears are down. That's a pretty typical little guy. If I had moved in, and I spent a lot of time working with this guy. So initially there was a lot of striking with his front paws, a lot of the kitten spitting. He was pretty angry there in the beginning. So this is just kind of he's asking me to stay away, and I did that because I needed to make friends with him. So sorry about that. So this video is a little different. This is a slightly older kitten. She's about 4 months old. This is one of my fosters. And you'll see she's just very on alert through the whole video, body position, very tense, very clenched. She's very much, trying to figure out what's going on, what her escape route is. Her pupils are very, very wide. It's a low light situation, but her pupils are wide because she's taking in so much information. So I'm actually playing with her, attempting to play with her with a wand toy, and that's what she's watching in her space. But she's just very much on alert. She's not vocalizing with me. She doesn't need to. She's just watching everything I do to make sure I'm not getting too close to her. And we'll talk a little bit about using toys with these guys. This was after I had done quite a bit of work with her, and I just every day was trying to introduce toys as a way to bond with her. And she just wasn't taking to them. But at this point, the toys are too fearful for her, causing her too much fear. But yeah, I mean, she's just very, very much on alert for that whole visit. And this is kind of the thing, what we work through. What kind of approach can we take when a kitten is this much on alert? This guy's a little bit older. He's actually about 6 months old, and I included this just because there's some interesting stuff going on with this little guy. We get a lot of growling from this one. It seems sometimes the older they get, you don't hear a ton of growling from very, very young kittens unless they have learned some really amazing skills from mom. But this guy definitely had a lot to say to me. So the body position is very clenched. We've got lots of vocalizations going on. Pupils are dilated. This kitten has a very frontal position towards me. The older they get, the more they kind of understand their position in the world and are able to take that position with a little bit more fortitude. But kind of interesting to note on this video, this little kitten also has some appeasing signals that you can kind of keep an eye out when you're working with your kittens. Lots of blinking, some lip licking. These are they are stress signals, they're appeasing signals. So though this kitten is growling at me and hissing at me, at the same time, there's also some moments where if I throw some appeasing signals at this human, maybe she'll back off and maybe we can have a relationship. So it's kind of interesting to see what's going on with that body language. So, I mean, that's pretty typical stuff. You can definitely see some more extreme behaviors. Again, taking videos of these guys, I don't want to push them to the point where we're seeing that. And you won't ever want to move into a space with a kitten where you are inciting those behaviors. So those are pretty typical distance increasing behaviors from these guys. So how do we want to set the space up when we've got these kittens to foster? How can we create a safe space for both us and our kittens? We'll kind of take a look at that. So there's a few options that you can go with, and kind of everyone does the thing that works best for them. You can use a large dog crate. I prefer the extra large dog crate over kind of the other options, but some folks will set their kittens up in a small bathroom. Some folks will use a playpen, which I'll kind of show you what that looks like. The only thing with the playpen, there are some considerations. It's typically a kind of small space. And it really depends on what your space looks like in your home and what you're comfortable with. But these kind of enclosed playpens can be relatively small spaces. And I know when we're talking about the difference between a dog crate and a playpen, perhaps that doesn't seem, like there's that much difference. And it just depends on what you end up feeling most comfortable with. But I prefer the crate over the playpen. There are lots of fosters who love the playpen, so we're going to talk about both. You just want to make sure that whatever space they have offers them plenty of hiding space. And we'll take a look at what that looks like in each of those spaces, but we want to make sure they have somewhere to retreat, somewhere where they feel safe, somewhere that they can go to get away from you when they need to. Obviously, we want to make sure they have their food, their water, and their litter. We're going to offer them toys, even if they don't play with them while you're there. There is every possibility they're going to play with them when you're not there. So we want to make sure that they have toys to play with. Lots of comfort items. I like lots of big fluffy blankets. I personally tend to stay away from cat beds because a lot of times kittens will just burrow under them. And then you're just kind of in a position where they've got this comfort item that is just taking up space. But big fluffy blankets and towels, those things are great to have in there. And the other kind of really important part about setting up your space is that you want to make sure that it's quiet, away from the activity of your home. I can say, as a foster, that's difficult for me. I have a very small home. I have a son and there's kids running around in my house all the time and dogs. And so that is difficult. And we'll kind of talk about ways to mitigate that problem. But the quietest space you can find is always going to be the best space. Let me pick up. Oh, so with the dog crate, we're going to provide you with dog crates. So you don't need to worry about that. But I always I prefer the extra large. Because I have dogs, I happen to have an extra large dog crate that I use of my own, but we're going to provide you with a dog crate. So it's always going to be the large or the extra large. Anything smaller than that, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of navigate what you need to do. And it will make them feel too confined too. So, but we, all of these things, the dog crate, and when we have playpens, last spring, we did have playpens and probably should still have a couple more lingering about. I'll check with Anne-Marie about that. But so anything that you need, we're going to provide you with. So you don't need to worry about that. Unless you have a crate at home that you want to use, that's totally fine. But mine is actually the Great Dane size, even though my dogs are only 50 pounds, because we use the crates at my house for something else. And it's just their hangout. So I happen to have extra large at my house. It can be too big. So like the lab size is usually ideal, just the large. I just happen to have the giant crate. So this is a bathroom setup. And it's really important to note that small bathrooms really work best. In my house, and sorry, I keep kind of going back to those references, but in my house, I have a very, very small half bath that I used to foster in. And it's a fantastic space if you've got a small bathroom, because you can really give them the space they need. And it actually, they feel safer when they have just a little bit more space like that, because they can control their space a little bit better. So if you have a small bathroom that you can foster in, that really is kind of the ideal situation. But you're same deal. You're going to offer them a hiding space. We can see in this picture, there's the cardboard box there. You can, whatever hiding space works best in your space is going to work. And if anything that we can provide you with, we will. We can put cat carriers. Open cat carriers are a fantastic place for them to hide. Whatever, your space needs, we can most likely find it for you. So all their basic resources, the food, the water, litter box, all those things are there. Toys are important. In this picture, the toys are over by the litter box or the toilet and the kind of around the toilet. So they get scattered about, right? So comfort items, in your hiding space, you want to make sure there's some nice comfort items. And in a bathroom, if you've got a tile floor, we want to have a rug down just to, they have a hard time regulating their body heat. So we want to make sure that that's nice and warm for them. And definitely in a bathroom setup, there are a couple of safety concerns. We need to keep the toilet seat down all the time. Kittens are curious, even if they're fearful, they're going to find their way around when you're not there. So we need to make sure that toilet seat is down. You want to make sure that there are no opportunities for them to get into any holes or anything. They can find ways into spaces that you don't know exist. So you want to really kind of survey your bathroom and make sure that there's, there aren't any holes that they can find in drywall or anything like that. You'd be very surprised they can find their ways into things. So just kind of surveying your bathroom and make sure that there's really nothing there that they can get into. And that's part of the reason I had to stop fostering in my half bath. We found just enough space around a pipe that kittens were able to get into. So that didn't work anymore. So safety concerns in the bathroom are, you want to make sure that everything looks nice and closed off. I love to be able to offer them any sort of white noise. If we can play music in there, a TV is obviously probably not, super practical in a bathroom, but if, I don't know, some people might be able to do that. So a white noise machine, something that we can not only, when you have a busier home and, this is your quiet space, this is a space we're going to foster, and, life happens. So if we can have a white noise machine in there to kind of cut some of that noise, cut some of that stimulus down for them, even if it's just initially while we're working with them, that can be really helpful. But yeah, I do love the bathroom because it really does allow for more space for you to work with your kittens. Anne Marie said, yes, we have some playpens in our chat. So we do have some playpens. And, if folks end up really loving them, it's something we can add to our wish list and definitely get more of. So yay, playpens. So yeah, that's a bathroom setup. Then we'll look at the crate setup. This is a really bad picture. I apologize. I thought I had pictures of my crate setup saved on my computer, and I didn't, and I could have just set another one up. So this is the crate that's in our dog temperament test room that I kind of set up to show what it would look like. We love the large or extra large dog crate. In the crate, I keep all the resources toward the front, the litter box and the food and water, so that if we have very, very fearful kittens, we're not reaching into their space to get those things out. We can get them out relatively easily without really disturbing them, and having any sort of hiding space in there, whatever ends up working in your space, in your crate. I always kind of go for the cardboard box because it holds heat nicely, and they can claw at it if they want to. It adds another level of security for them that I personally really like the cardboard box. Lots of folks will leave the open crate cat carrier in there, and that is absolutely fine as well. Whatever kind of works for you and in your space. Everyone definitely finds a way of doing things that feel best for them. So, but again, we're going to have toys, we're going to have comfort items. And the one thing I will say about the crate setup is a lot of folks are able to do that in a bedroom somewhere. So there's some potential to have a TV playing or to have music playing, and if not, we can have a white noise machine in there for sure. Any sort of sound barrier is going to be really helpful. And I love, I create hammocks for the kittens in my crates. I tie kind of up in that upper left corner there, I tie towels on there, and often I'll drape down from there another towel so that it adds another hiding space for them. So they can climb up into the hammock if they want, and then with a towel draped over, kind of over the whole situation there, it gives them another hiding space, and I'll kind of stuff that corner with some more towels so they can burrow in there if they want, and just make that whole back of the crate a really good secure hiding spot for them. I do prefer the crate for very fearful kittens. I find that uh, giving them too much space in a bathroom makes it actually more difficult for you to work with them. So when we're talking about, the guys that are spitting and kind of a bit more defensive, if we can eliminate some of the space, it does make it a little bit easier for you, because you're going to want to be using food as a resource for them, as a way to desensitize your presence. And if you can't reach them, it does make it more difficult. So I prefer the crate for that reason. Oh, so when I'm attaching it, I just tie it on there. This picture, I'm so sorry. I will try and get a better picture of my personal setup so that you guys can kind of see what that looks like. I just tie it on there. I have tried a bunch of different things. I've tried the big like bulldog clips. I've tried a bunch of stuff, but literally just tying knots, tying the ends of the towel onto the crate bars has worked really well. And sometimes they'll pull it down. It's not a big deal. I'll just put it back up, or I'll just leave it depending on what they were kind of doing. But yeah, I just tie it on there with nice little knots. It's kind of tedious to get it on there, but it works. And this is a playpen set up from the top. So these playpens are enclosed on all sides, top, sides, the whole thing's enclosed with kind of the mesh playpen material. So the only thing about these guys, again, is that they can offer less kind of square footage on the floor than a crate would. So, but again, lots of people love these. It's just something I haven't gotten the hang of. And it's the same deal. We're going to set up the same way. And this is just showing from a top view. There's a front entry that you'll be using far more often to work with them than ever the top. You don't really want to open that top up and encourage them to kind of pop out at you. So there's a front entry on these guys. So, but again, you're just gonna have your basic resources in there. Same deal, the litter box, your toys, whatever comfort items you're using in there. It's still going to go in a smaller, quiet space. Again, when I have kittens in a crate, they're in a bedroom. The door is closed all the time with white noise playing. The same would be true of your playpen. It's not going to be sitting in your living room or your kitchen. It's in a quiet space in your home. There are a few safety considerations because kittens can climb the walls of these guys really easily. It's never been a problem that I'm aware of. It's just something to be kind of aware of. They can climb the walls. You might have kittens getting stuck here or there. Again, it's not something that I feel we've really had any problems with. I just want to mention it so that you can kind of keep your eye on that. And again, we're going to have some sound barrier in the room wherever they are. These playpens are great for kittens that are kind of on the more social end of the spectrum because they're going to spend less time in there than they would, if you've got a very fearful kitten, it's going to spend a good amount of time in the crate while you're working with it. If we've got kittens kind of on the other end of the spectrum, they're feeling a little bit more social, perhaps they need a little bit less desensitization. The playpen's great because it's a nice, warm, safe place for them to have as home base. And then they can have room of the room once they're feeling a little bit more comfortable with people. So typically the deal with these guys, it's a little different than fostering like a very large group of kittens. When we're sending out these very fearful guys, that's going to be in pairs, it's going to be singles or in pairs. Excuse me. I prefer pairs, obviously, but when we're just talking about the kind of the details of fostering these very fearful guys, they're going to be very small groups. It's very difficult to socialize large groups, so we break them up into multiple fosters. So as far as how many kittens per playpen, it's just going to be a couple. So we won't have to worry too much about that. When there will be times that we have very fearful moms going out with kittens, and that's those are different fosters, that's a different situation. So for this specific kind of assignment, it would just be a couple of kittens per space. But yeah, and all the comments about putting towels over. Oh my gosh, I didn't mention that. Yes, your crates and your playpen should be covered. So sorry that I completely missed that. They should be covered. You're going to want to put blankets over whatever you're using, so that we can again limit stimulus and help them feel more enclosed and safe. So yeah, towels over the top. Always, the tablecloth is a fantastic idea as well. And we'll send you out with that stuff. We're going to send you with blankets and stuff. So you don't need to worry about that. But so with the cage cell kitten condo, yeah, send me a picture of that. I imagine it would be fine, but yeah, I'd like to see that. And that should be okay, but definitely send me a picture so we can, and Amory and I can take a look at it, but I bet that would be fine. And as far as sunlight, they're going to get ambient light. And so what we don't want is for these crates, we don't want to be covering and uncovering. What we need is consistency for them. It's really important that they have consistency. So they are absolutely going to be getting ambient light. They're not going to be in the dark, and they're not completely covered. With the playpen, you're going to cover the top of it. And you can cover, partial sides depending on how it is positioned in whatever room you're fostering in. And if you're using a dog crate, the top will be covered and 2 or 3 sides will be covered, not the entire thing. But with these guys, we're more concerned about making sure that their stimulus is limited, that they feel safe in the space that they're in. They're not, to be honest, they're not concerned about their sunlight. What they're concerned about is that they've been removed from an environment that made sense to them, and now they're inside in an environment that's very scary. So we just need to limit stimulus. I'm not by any means saying they're not going to get sunlight. They absolutely are. But it's really important that we make sure they feel as safe as possible. So that's kind of what the intention of covering them is. So what are we going to do? How, we've got them in these crates. What do we do now? How do we work with them to build trust with them? And everyone, it's really important to note that the folks that are used to doing this, folks that have experience doing this, have you kind of build on a way that works for you. So I'm going to present you with the way that is least stressful for the kittens, the way that can be most successful as far as generalizing behaviors to more than one person. So I know everyone kind of has their own thing, and absolutely I'd like to talk about the ways that folks do things, but this is kind of just the most effective way to avoid increasing stress and fear in these guys. So what do your first interactions with your foster look like? It's really important that we are mindful of our own body language. When we're entering the room, when we're approaching their space, we want to make sure that we are very calm, that we're still, that we're quiet with them, that we're consistent in our movements and how we interact with them. I can say, as someone who is probably one of the more clumsy people you'll ever meet, it's very, when I enter the room where my kittens are, I make sure that I'm quiet with the door, I'm quiet as I approach them. I move in slowly, I'm quiet with them. A lot of times, it's, when we say move slowly and deliberately, it is just that. We want to make sure that they know we're coming, because we're entering the room. They can see that, they know we're coming, but we're not approaching quickly. We're not approaching, having a loud conversation with them. We're just kind of moving in. We're non-threatening, and we're quiet with them. So, and, as far as body language with any animal, we don't stand over them. Try and make yourself as small as possible, sit on the floor with them. We're going to stand over them as little as possible. Any human interacting with any animal, we try not to stand over them. So, but with these guys, especially, if you can make yourself small, avoid kind of making that direct eye contact and staring at them. These things will all kind of help them feel that you are less threatening. They're very little and we're very big. So if we can make ourselves as small and quiet as possible, that's going to be really helpful. And we're not going to reach towards them. We'll talk about what, actual physical interactions look like in just a minute. But We're not going to reach towards them, not on those first interactions, not until they tell us they're ready for us to reach towards them. So when you just bring, when we're first bringing them home, we're just going to set them up. We're going to let them explore their space. We're going to leave them with food and water. We can talk quietly to them. We can sit and read in the room to them. We can watch TV in the room with them in their crate. But we're not going to do much more than just give them their space those first couple of days, and just let them start to own that space, feel safe in that space. We're really not going to offer them much more than basic care and just speaking to them quietly. It depends on kind of the reactions we're getting from them. But the first day for sure, we're not doing anything more than that. Perhaps the second day, it just depends on, where they are and in their comfort level with you being in the room with them. So when we're just starting out, we're a day or two in, we know what their eating habits are at this point. We know if they're eating well or if they're picky. We have some sense of, do they like dry food? Do they like wet food? At this point, we can start to use food as a way to bond with them. So once we've kind of gathered the information that they're eating pretty well, we can stop free feeding wet food, and we're going to use that wet food as a way to work with them. And you become their source for wet food as much as possible. Because these guys are kittens, we want to leave out small meals of dry food. If it's really important that if you're able to, within your schedule, actually feed them meals of dry food as opposed to just free feeding them, that would be fantastic. But it is equally important that they continue to eat. So that's going to just kind of be on a case by case basis. Typically when I'm fostering, I'll set them up. I keep an eye on them. I take, clean the litter box and change their food and water for a couple of days just to see, are you eating well? Are you using the litter box? Are you eating well enough that I can remove your dry food and then I become your sole source of food? Maybe you're not. So if you're not eating as well as I'd like, I'm going to leave that dry food all the time. It's just going to stay out, and we're just going to use wet food instead of trying to do both. And either are fine. What's most important is that they continue to eat. Obviously, that's the most important thing. So, but if we've got kittens that are eating their dry food pretty consistently and show interest in their wet food, at that point, we're going to remove free feeding wet food, and the wet food comes solely from you. So what does that look like? What does that mean when I say that? What'll happen is you're going to work it into your routine, that you are able to consistently at set times during the day. And this doesn't need to be a long drawn out process, and it doesn't need to, interfere with your daily schedule. But we're going to decide on times during the day that we can go into that room with our wet food and just start placing the food bowl near the kitten. So we're going to go in there, go into the crate or the playpen or wherever your kittens are, and just put that bowl of wet food near your kitten and move away, far enough away that the kitten will start to eat while you're still there. We're not going to move in to the space. We're not going to do anything other than put that bowl of food there, let that kitten eat. We can talk to them, let them know that you're there, but we're not going to impose ourselves in the kitten space. So, we're just going in, we put the bowl of food there, they eat the food, we remove the food bowl. They've had this very positive interaction with a human who fed them this delicious meal. They talked to me. I didn't have too many feelings about that. They took my food bowl away. It wasn't a terrible interaction. That wasn't scary. I'm okay. And we're just going to repeat that and just continue moving in closer and closer, while the kitten eats. And as long as they're continuing to eat, we're just going to keep moving closer and closer. And there are times with some kittens that this will happen on your first feeding. So, we've already made these huge strides. The kitten will continue to eat while I'm there. So this is fantastic. This is important information to have. And I can move on to the next step. This is great. And sometimes it'll take days for that to happen. It really depends on, how your kittens are feeling about you. And it's okay if they stop eating and kind of watch you and go back to eating. Feel free to, let's try and move in another step. If they physically retreat back to their hiding space, then we've gone too far. And that's okay. It's going to happen. These guys are tricky, so they're going to do the unexpected. So, we're just going to give them that food, let them eat, and try to get ourselves as close to them as possible while they're eating. And again, if they stop eating, look at you and go back to eating, by all means, stay where you are, even try and move forward some. It's really when they just retreat and stop eating that we're gonna just, kind of end that interaction, and that's fine. If the kitten does retreat, go ahead and leave that bowl of food there, let them finish that meal. It's okay. We still want that interaction to end on a positive note. So even though they were scared, and ran away, that's okay. You still brought them a delicious meal. They still ate that food, and they will finish that meal without you there, and that is totally fine. What we're really trying to build with these guys is trust that you are not going to do anything that is beyond their threshold for fear. The way to really kind of get to these guys is for them to learn trust that the person that's interacting with them isn't going to make them do anything they don't want to do. And it happens much more quickly this way because it's a realistic trust. It's a kitten building resiliency. It's a kitten learning that people are not scary. So, and this is just a process we're just going to repeat over and over again until we have kittens that are eating from a bowl while we're sitting very close to them. So this is really, it sounds probably repetitive and perhaps a little boring, but this is where it all starts. We want kittens who, when we come in and feed them, they allow us to sit near them, talking to them while they eat. That's what we're looking for in this kind of beginning phase. So after that, we've got a kitten that, these poor guys, this is like the classic I'm terrified kitten position with these ears. Just so flat. It's amazing. They just can try and make those ears disappear. But, and these were actually kittens that we were working with at the shelter who did really well. So, we can go from this to adoptable in just a little while. It just takes a little bit of this kind of patience. So anyway, we've got, if the kitten allows approach, and will continue to eat with you there. So now we're at the point where we can start to, instead of offering them this bowl of food, let's try and offer them food from a spoon or a tongue depressor. And we're going to try and feed the entire meal this way. You can speak to your kitten while you're doing that. Or kittens, obviously, we're however many kittens you have, and just talk to them quietly, reinforce that they're, all the things that we say to our fosters while we're, helping them feel safe. Just speak softly to them while you're feeding them. And if they will continue to stay close while we're feeding from the spoon or tongue depressor, let's try and touch them while they're eating. And that means just I always kind of start with cheeks or the forehead a little bit. And if they move away, if they stop eating or if they move away, we're going to stop touching them, but we're not going to move away, and we're not going to stop feeding them at that point. Continue to offer them the food. Let's finish this meal if we can. And if they do stop eating entirely, then go ahead and just give them the remainder of whatever that meal is and let them kind of reset from that interaction. So we spent all this time moving in close enough that they'll let us feed them in this manner. And now we're hoping that they will at least continue to eat an entire meal from us offering it to them in a very physical, kind of personal way. So we've made it to this point. Let's see if we can touch you. And if they will let you touch face and head, then we're making amazing progress. Let's continue there for a bit, and we're going to talk about what happens next coming up. But if at any point the kitten runs away during any of this, and there are going to be days that are good and perhaps days that are bad, it just depends on how, kittens are living beings who have had experiences while we weren't there. And, perhaps someone, came to the door and, if you've got dogs, the dogs were barking, something scary happened. So that day may not be a great day for them. That doesn't mean we're going back to the beginning. Let's take one step back. I tried to touch my kitten and she ran away. So that's okay. The next meal I feed, I'm not going to try and touch her. I'm just going to feed her from my spoon. And we're going to do that for a few more meals. And then we're going to try and touch her again. That's absolutely fine. And it's going to happen. And that's what it looks like. And that's completely fine. So all of this is leading up to us being able to pick the kitten up. So we've made it to a point where we can pet them. and they're letting us pet them while they eat. And sometimes we'll make it to the point where we can not only pet the head and cheeks, but we can pet their whole body, and things are going great. So let's move on to picking them up. I want to just show you what some of these visits can look like, kind of what a first visit might look like, and kind of moving forward. There's a couple of these, so we can kind of take a look at this. This is a kitten I've been working with for a little while. And that's baby food, which we absolutely can provide you with. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So this little guy let me move in and feed him, but at this point in our interaction, I couldn't do anything further with this little one. So basically at this point, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just feeding from the tongue depressor until, yep. So he's hissing at me, right? Because I moved. Movement is bad. But he's watching everything I'm doing. And the hissing is okay, but he's starting to move away, right? So off he goes. And I'm going to stay there with my food because I'm so determined. But he's not coming back. So at this point, I'm not sure what I'm doing with the toy there. Very sorry about, I don't know what's happening. I think I'm getting ready to fill the bowl with food so that I can leave it for him. So that's what a first visit can, we've made it to the point where I can be near him while he eats. So I'm trying the tongue depressor, and I got him the first time with that tongue depressor, and then it was too much. So he moved away. So at that point, I just fill his bowl with food and leave it for him and kind of leave his space. There's lots of different food motivators you can try too. Kittens are not typically super picky. And I happen to be working with this kitten in the shelter. So I needed a higher value food motivator to work with them. So I was using baby food with this guy. You don't typically need something quite that high value, but if you do, if you're having problems working with your kitten, finding that thing that really kind of interests them, let us know. And we will send you with a huge variety of things to try, because there's lots of things to try. But this little guy moved away. So I ended that session, but I'm going to go back and we're going to keep working on this with this little guy. But that's what a visit can look like. So this is our little gray friend, who that body language and this kind of still kind of tells it all, with that face kind of buried and very tense, body kind of in that moment telling me to go away.
Maybe you want to try some of this?
I was having a really hard time finding a food motivator for this little one.
Smell good.
She says, no, that doesn't smell good. No, thank you.
Okay. Can have this.
So this little one wouldn't eat for me. Things are more difficult in the shelter. There's a lot more stressors. So I run into bigger problems with kittens wanting to eat for me. But this is a pretty simple, the kitten didn't want to eat for me. The kitten was very tense when I moved into her space. So I just left her some food and kind of went on my way. And that's what these first visits are going to look like. But we're getting better. This is the same kitten.
Hi, baby. Want some more food? I think. That look good? That look good, baby?
She's on me with my camera. So now she's feeling a little bit more confident with me, a little bit more comfortable about eating. So that's good. She's a little bit more loose. It's hard to tell from this angle, but she's a little more loose. She's very alert of me being there, but she continues to eat. I'm very sorry about the extra noise there. So that's, we're making progress. The kitten's more comfortable with me and is eating in front of me. So we're going to keep going. And here's our little friend moving forward. She's eating better for me. to the point where I can move into her space a little bit.
Okay.
She stops eating, of course.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
So I move out of the way because she stopped eating, but I didn't move physically. I stayed where I was because that was the last step that she was comfortable with. And you can always try again. So this is the same visit, right? I offered my hand again and she very clearly told me no. She said, nope, we're done. Please stop. So at that point, I'm just going to let her eat. I'm just going to move away and let her eat. And that's the end of that session. Oh, hang on one sec. So this one is kind of, we're at the point where she's ready for adoption. I know we missed a lot of steps here with her, but
yeah.
So she had gotten to the point where she was allowing me to pet her while she ate. And I was able to just remove food entirely and have an actual visit with her where she was responsive. She leans in a little bit for pets. She's a little bit tense in the beginning, but she leans in for pets. She's allowing full body pets. And she's feeling a lot more safe and comfortable.
What a good boy you are.
See, I always misgender cats. You'll hear me probably throughout these videos. So we've made it. This little one is allowing interaction. And that's kind of all we need is for them to allow this kind of interaction. That's really the end goal. So what kind of what happens once, once we're allowing some sort of interaction, what happens? We're going to kind of, as you saw, offer pets without food involved. We can try playtime. A lot of folks will introduce playtime a lot earlier than I do, and that's totally fine. I prefer to kind of get into a place where I can interact with them and they feel safe enough with me to touch them before I try playtime. But when I'm really struggling with the kitten, I'll introduce playtime a lot earlier. The only reason you want to be careful is because toys can be scary for these guys sometimes. A lot of these guys have not seen toys before, or most definitely have not seen a toy that has a human attached to the other end. So they can be scary. So, you want to make sure that if you're introducing toys, it's not actually reinforcing their fear. So, if they're running away from the toy, they're not ready to play. The kitten that was kind of sitting on top of a carrier, very alert to what I was doing with that toy, she didn't want to play with me. She was very playful when I wasn't there, which is why I kept trying to introduce toys to her, but she didn't want me to play with her. And it's important to know that kind of the reason we're not forcing ourselves, we're not forcing interactions on these guys. We're also not forcing playtime on them because everything that we do that forces an interaction reinforces their fear. So it's really important that we want to make sure that they're responding to toys in some way when we play with them before we use playtime as a way to bond with them. But quieter toys are always the safest. Wand toys are fantastic. Any wand toy that just has a feather without any bells is a great way to go because a lot of times these guys have an awesome prey drive and you can really get to them with a wand toy. A lot of times they'll love anything that rolls, just kind of rolling a ball across the, the floor of the crate or whatever and letting them interact with that is a safe way to play with them. You definitely can use playtime to build their confidence and to bond with them. It just makes them feel safe. There's, it's another positive interaction with a human in which all I get to do is play. I've got humans interacting with me with food. That's all I have to do is eat. This is great. Now there's toys. All I have to do is play. Nothing is scary here. Nothing, this human's not scary to me. And we're just, playtime with any cat. We just want to make sure that we're always letting them win. I think I have a video of letting a kitten win. It seems silly, but a lot of people, it's important that we're not kind of really overstimulating them. We want to just let them win and let the game end. But what's most important with any interaction with these guys is that we're letting them make the decisions. There's this relatively old school thinking of forced loving with these guys. We can get them to, we can break them of their fear if we grab them and hold them. But what is actually happening is they're shutting down. It's not them feeling safe with you. They're shutting down so that you will stop touching them. So what we need to do is stop kind of pushing interactions on these guys. We don't want to push interactions on them. We want everything to be at their pace. Let them choose the interaction, let them choose the pace of the interaction. And if we're always kind of prepared to take a step backwards when we need to, with the thought in mind, this interaction didn't work today, but that doesn't mean tomorrow I'm not going to try again. Just always being prepared to take a step backwards, always understanding that when the kitten is too fearful to interact with us, they're not learning anything. They're not learning any salient behaviors from us. All they're learning is that humans are just as scary as mom told me they were. Their confidence and resiliency, it comes from being able to choose what the interactions look like. So it's really important. The steps are pretty simple. We're going to feed, we're going to pet them when they're ready. And we'll talk a little bit about picking them up in a moment. We're going to play with them when they're ready. They're all kind of simple steps. So just knowing that this is a very simple process and that we're, really trying very hard not to push them into interactions that are uncomfortable for them. It's a simple process. We can really kind of take all of any kind of extra kind of chatter out of there. It's just a really simple process. And at some point we're going to start introducing new people as well. And that will happen when the kitten is once the kitten is feeling confident with you, confident enough that you can pet them, by all means, start introducing other people. They're going to use the same techniques that you used to interact with the kitten. Okay. Yep. So as far as how many times per day should we approach when food is not involved? So truthfully, what we're talking about are very short visits. So you can really, on a weekend day when I'm not working and I've got kittens here, I'll be in with them a dozen times during the day. It just depends on what their reaction is. If they've gotten to a point where they're just running away and hiding and hissing, then I'm just going to kind of leave them be. I've overdone it. It's time. They need a break. So it depends on their response to you being there. If you're seeing a positive response every time you go in, then just go in as often as you're able to go in. If they decide to retreat, and they're not coming out the next time you come in, then definitely give them a break. However long that works within your schedule, and come back maybe the next day, even whatever seems to work best for your day and how the kitten's responding. Everything that we do is really based on their response. So the times per day it's really just based on how they're responding to you and what your schedule looks like, to be honest. It will just depend on how they respond to you interacting with them. So yeah, Angela, we're going to talk about when to let them out of the crate too. Pretty much, I'm going to be honest, I can't remember what's coming up next, but we are going to talk about it. We'll get to that. So next we're moving towards picking the kitten up. So once we're at the point where the kitten's consistently allowing us to pet them, and is hopefully moving into our space as well at that point, we're going to start picking them up, and we're going to start picking them up as often as they will allow us to pick them up. And sometimes the initial when we're just getting started on kind of this, my paws are off the ground and this human has me in their hands, it can be pretty scary. So you want to make sure that you've got food ready for them to reinforce the good behavior that we're looking for, or the behavior that we're looking for. So I'm gonna, we'll offer them food and kind of encourage them close to us. We're gonna pet them in the manner that they're used to us petting them, that they've been responding to, and just kind of wrap them up in a towel and pick them up and continue to offer them food on your spoon or your tongue depressor and continue petting them. Hopefully they're going to continue eating and feel safe. But if they start to struggle, that's when we put them down. And yet this is yet another thing that we'll just continue doing until, a little bit of struggle is okay. Obviously, it takes a while to build a kitten up to feel safe being held, right? So if we kind of put them down and give them a break when they struggle, When they're very fearful, that's fantastic. Make sure you're rewarding them when you put them down. And we can try again, even in just a few moments. If the kitten stays nearby, you've had them wrapped in the towel, they get scared, we put them down, we continue reinforcing them to have them stay near us with this food. And they're still eating and things have gone back to, we were normal, I can pet you still, everything's still normal. Definitely try and wrap them up again and try and pick them up again and see how that goes. It's all these baby steps, and hopefully we'll get to the point where they'll let us pick them up kind of in a very normal kitten way, right? Having them on your lap, or some kittens like to be shoulder kittens or whatever. But we're going to start with this towel wrap. We're going to start by reinforcing it as it happens and reinforcing it after it's over. If the kitten runs away after you put them down, give them a meal, leave them a bowl of wet food so that they can have that to come back to. And then just try again the next day. It's really all these approximations of behavior that we're looking for. And that's no different with picking them up. So, and we kind of talked about adding in playtime. And I promise we're going to talk about letting them out of the crate, although now I'm not sure what slide it's on, so we'll talk about that. But playtime can really be as effective as food for some kittens. So we kind of touched on this a little bit ago, but if you're really struggling with a kitten, definitely toss in some toys and see if you can bond with them over toys. Because sometimes they'll be fearful of you trying to feed them, but they won't be fearful of the toy being introduced. So along with everything else we've talked about, we're only going to use toys if there's no fear response. And you can definitely use it in conjunction with a food motivator. If you're got a kitten that loves to play, we can have a play session with them, and then try and, sneak in some food and see if we can pet them. If we can have a play session, give them a meal, and see if at that point they'll let you touch head or cheeks, see how that works. We can definitely use these in conjunction with the other work that we're doing. Again, wand toys are really wonderful. I prefer wand toys for almost all cat play, but for kittens, these guys especially, because it keeps you at a distance and it keeps you safely away. You can toss balls and mice, whatever, if you've got toys in their space and you hear them playing with those toys at night, definitely use those toys that are in their space to try and play with them. That can be a really great way. They already smell like them. We know that they already play with them. So, but definitely use that in conjunction with handling, use it in conjunction with any of the steps you're taking with them. The only concern would be, we don't want to play with them and then try and pick them up. Ever. Not with any kittens. We don't ever want to do that because they're probably in a heightened state of stimulation. And that's really the moment in which we just want to kind of wind them down from a play session and give them some food to eat, and then we can try and pet them or pick them up. So as far as taking a step back real fast to the towel, the purpose of the towel is actually to keep you safe. So, if we are just beginning this kind of handling with them, if we're just beginning this picking up process, they very well could oppose that process. You can have made a ton of progress with these guys. And things can be going great, and you can think that this picking them up is going to be just as wonderful. But it's really common for all cats, once their feet are off the ground, to feel very unsafe. And kittens have very sharp claws and very sharp teeth. So if we wrap them in the towel, not only do they feel safer because they're a little more confined, it's kind of, we wrap a baby to help the baby feel more safe, right? It's the same deal. They feel safer, they feel enclosed. And that way we're also kind of protecting ourselves should they decide that being picked up is a really, really scary prospect. So the towel is going to keep you safe, and it's going to help them feel safe as well. It's kind of like swaddling a baby. So let's see. Oops. Well, this is just a video of playing with a cat, which is kind of funny. But it's funny to note that this kitten specifically had a very strange level of socialization with people. He didn't want to be touched all that much, but he loved playing. So with him, just letting him have control of that butterfly with the feather on the end, it made him so happy. And I could toss him toys, and it was a really great interaction with him, and just letting him grab that butterfly and hold on to it really made him feel like he'd won something, and it was a way for me to be able to bond with him. So I know it's kind of silly to show a video of playing with kittens, but just let them win, and then wind them down with a good food, some sort of food motivator after. It can be a great way to interact with these guys. I wish I had other video of this kitten because he was a really interesting little guy. Just didn't really want to be handled at all, but man, he loved to play. So what are we looking for out of all of this? What is all, what's the end goal here? We want kittens that will approach people. And, if you don't have people coming over, that's completely fine. If they, approach you, that's fantastic. We want kittens that are allowing touch. We would love to have kittens that allow being picked up. We want them responsive to attention, meaning, they show some sort of positive response to you petting them. Shy is totally okay. They can be shy. We can find homes for shy kittens. What we can't find homes for are kittens that are hissing and spitting at people, kittens that are displaying defensive behaviors when approached. Those guys, it's very hard for us to find homes for them. If you do have other people in your house or have other people that can come over, it's fantastic if they also generalize that behavior to other people. If you can have multiple people working with your kittens, that's fantastic, because that just means we are more resilient and we are more prepared for other people to approach us and be with us. And it's also at this point, when our kittens are responsive to attention and our kittens are approaching us when we kind of approach the crate, that we can give them more access to the room that they're in. Typically, when I've gotten to the point where they're responsive to attention and they don't, it's okay if they run away when I enter, the crate or whatever, but as long as they come back out to me, I know that at that point, they're pretty much ready to be let out. It's important that we don't let them out of their crate too early, because once they have access to whatever room they're in and the hiding spaces and all of the freedom there, a lot of times the behavior will backslide a little bit. So we really want them to be quite responsive to you as their caregiver before they're given access to the room that they're in. Kind of all of these things, these behaviors that we're looking for, these are the things that would indicate they're ready to be let out of their crate or their playpen or, whatever situation they're in. And it's really important that they're still in a small room, a bedroom, or whatever small space that that crate or whatever is in. That's the space that they get. These guys aren't going to have access to your home. Typically, they're not going to be in foster long enough for them to be introduced to your home, but they can absolutely have access to the room that they're in as long as they're displaying these types of behaviors. So potential outcomes are really important to talk about because what we're talking about are kittens who are coming to us deeply unsocialized. And I can tell you, I don't know what total number of kittens I fostered last year, but I had a very high rate of barn adoptions come from my fosters. And I personally tend to foster more difficult kittens. So it's to be expected with those guys, older kittens who display really defensive behaviors. But it's important to know that is an option. So the hope for all of these guys is that they're going to a traditional adoption. Our hope is that we're able to do the work with them to get them to the point where they just go into a home like any other kitten, perhaps with some restrictions, recommendations for their adopters, and they find their way into a loving home inside. And that's the end goal. That's what we're hoping for. But it is important to know, and I can tell you as someone who has been in this position a number of times, that barn adoption or potentially being returned to the colony they came from are also options for these guys. And it's important believe me, I understand how difficult that potential is for people. For myself, it's difficult, but we also need to understand our adopters, understand what they are capable of, understand what they're looking for as far as adopting a kitten, and also understand when we've got kittens that are this fearful that even after desensitization, even after time in foster, they're still not responding to you as their caregiver. That's not someone's pet. That's a kitten that needs to go back to where her family is, Someone, they need to find their way to a less stressful environment. Because I can also tell you, as someone who has also kept foster kittens that probably should have been barn adoptions or probably should have been returned to their caregivers. It's not the best life for a cat to live in fear their entire life. It's very, very hard for us to understand that, because we want them to be happy and living inside forever for the rest of their lives. But it's also extraordinarily stressful for any animal to live in fear its entire life. And when they're that fearful of people, that's what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to live in fear, potentially for the rest of their lives. So as difficult as it is, this is part of what fostering these guys can look like sometimes. And it's not a huge percentage of the time, but it is important enough, because it happens. It's important enough to mention it so that we can have a conversation about that. But yeah, I mean, this is incredibly hard work. We'll all have kittens that, well, we won't all, but it is entirely possible that we will have kittens that go through barn adoption, and it's really okay. It's hard, but it's really okay. So the best that we can do is try to help them feel safe with people. It's sometimes they've just learned so much from their mom and their grandma and all the other female cats in their colony that they have learned that people are scary and that people are not going to help them. And they have the resources and the behaviors intact to make them successful and safe, in whatever environment they came from. So it's not something that happens all incredibly often, but it will happen. So I want to make sure that everyone kind of understands that is part of this sometimes. Yeah, Sarah, I don't know what the percentage is. I can tell you, so we really struggled with getting these guys to foster last year. And just being completely honest, we struggled pretty deeply with getting these guys to foster last year. And there were a few of us that took the really difficult ones, and a lot of ours ended up in barns. But there were others, younger ones. I believe we're looking at sending kittens up to 12 weeks out to foster, and that's still something that we're talking about. I can say for sure the younger ones that did go to foster did much better than, my 3-monthers that didn't necessarily do as well socially, behaviorally. I feel like we absolutely had more go through traditional adoption than barn adoption. I may be too close to it because I had so many go to barns last year. There were 3 of us actually that had a lot go to barns, but far more go through traditional than barn. I wanted to make sure that folks were aware that is something that happens with these guys sometimes. So yeah. So just is here, the foster department's out to you anyway. So we can 9-week-old kittens that are really struggling. But you are always welcome to email me. Generally an email is going to be more successful than a phone call. I'm not at my desk a ton, but I answer emails in the middle of the night. So email is always going to work better. And there's the foster's email as well. So but you'll get all that information too when you pick kittens up. But in general, if you have other questions, please feel free to email me pretty much about anything. Well, cat related. I can answer lots of questions, but mostly lots of cat questions. So please feel free to email with any questions that you have. If you're thinking about doing this and have questions about anything, please email and let me know so we can have a conversation about whatever your questions are. But and if you do foster, I will definitely be in touch with you, as will the foster department. So you'll get those emails in another way. So let's see what we got. Yep. So yeah, thank you, Carrie. So there's a question: how many weeks do we work on socializing these kittens? We're looking at no more than 4 weeks, but it really depends on age and how things are progressing too. So We're going to be checking in with you to see how things are going. And if you're taking like 6-week-old kittens, most likely by the time they're 8 weeks old, they're going to be perfectly fine for adoption. So that's kind of a, we're waiting for them to gain weight and we're socializing at the same time. And probably, when they're at weight, we're going to be good to go for adoption. If we're taking slightly older kittens, I believe the time frame we're looking for is up to 3 weeks with evaluations along the way, but that doesn't mean that, at 3 weeks, we say you must bring them back. If you're making progress with those guys, then it'll be a conversation about, okay, what are our next steps? What can we do next? But I believe for kittens that are at weight, which for us is 6 weeks, which I know is very young. But if they're at weight when you take them, we're looking at a foster period of 2 to 3 weeks. And I know that there was some talk of up to 4 weeks as well. I think 3 weeks was the time frame that was decided on. But every situation is going to be different, and there will be conversations. There will be a lot of communication about how things are going, what steps can we take to improve what's happening for you guys, or, there'll be lots of communication there. But I think if we're talking about kittens that are at weight when you take them, we're looking at a 3-week foster period. Anyone who's underweight likely will go out for whatever time period they need to gain weight and would just come back, is pretty much what that would look like. So, and that would be very dependent on what they weigh when they go out. But speaking specifically of guys that are big enough for adoption, 3 weeks, I think. So that's all I have. I appreciate all of your questions. I appreciate all of you being here so much. And please feel free to reach out with any further questions you have, any clarification you need on anything. Yeah. Oh, hang on, let me grab this question real fast. I lost my cursor. Thank you. So with the little guys, most likely they're going to be handleable. This particular presentation specifically was for kittens that are of weight and over, that are at adoption weight. There will be kittens that you may be asked to take once you've got this kind of unsocial kitten flag, who are fearful but can be handled, which is a different thing. You're going to follow all these steps, absolutely. But if they're, it's kind of a different fostering process. And I wish I knew entirely how all of the flagging stuff works for fosters, but it's a different process, and we will go over that with you when you take those kittens. But it's a slightly different situation than speaking specifically of kittens who are big enough. So if you were to take kittens that are underweight, that are very fearful, that would be a whole other conversation about how to weigh them and keep an eye on them. And we would have that conversation with you when you take them. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but everything is so individual with these guys that each thing's going to be handled a little differently. But the hope is if you're taking underweight kittens, you can handle them enough to weigh them. So hopefully that answers that question. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any other questions, but I really want to thank everyone for being here. And I very much encourage you to reach out to me with any questions you might have. And if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer out for you. Yeah, I very much appreciate you all being here. And I'm certain we've gone over time. I'm very sorry about that. But thank you all so much for being here. I very much.
Thank you, Jess, so much for presenting. We appreciate it. All right, everybody have a really great night.